I guess I always knew I was different in my family. Not in a special way, but in another way. Like I was a background character in a movie where my younger sister, Zoe, was the undisputed star. From the moment she was born, when I was just 5, it was like a switch flipped in our house. Suddenly, the spotlight wasn't just off me. It felt like the entire stage had been packed up and moved to wherever Zoe happened to be. Before Zoe, things were normal, I think. As normal as a kid's life gets. I drew pictures, played outside, got tucked in at night. But then came Zoe, and with her came the fanfare. My parents didn't just love her, they seemed to worship her. Every sneeze was a symphony, every scribble a masterpiece. I remember showing my mom a drawing I was really proud of, some lopsided rocket ship I'd spent an hour on. She barely glanced at it, patting my head absent-mindedly while cooing at Zoe for just sitting there. "That's nice, Caleb," she'd say, her eyes glued to her little star. As Zoe grew, so did the disparity. Family gatherings weren't about catching up. They were Zoe's performances. If she took a dance class, relatives were summoned to watch her stumble through a routine. If she joined a choir, we all sat through hours of practice sessions. Meanwhile, I was the designated helper. "Caleb, set the table. Caleb, get drinks for everyone. Caleb, make sure Zoe has everything she needs." My own activities, my school projects, my friends, they were footnotes if they were mentioned at all. The chores were legendary. I swear Zoe thought clean clothes magically appeared in her closet. If there was anything that needed doing around the house, big or small, it was my job. "You're the older brother, Caleb. You need to set an example." An example of what? Of being the unpaid, invisible servant? My allowance, when I got one, often felt like it was subsidizing Zoe's endless activities or trendy clothes, though my parents never said it outright. They'd just say, "Family expenses are high right now," right after buying Zoe the latest gadget or enrolling her in another expensive club. It wasn't just about physical tasks. If Zoe had a problem, big or small, it somehow became my responsibility. If she lost something, it was because I didn't remind her to be careful. If she scraped her knee, I should have been watching her. I remember one time, she forgot her expensive competition uniform at home. Parents were in a panic. I was halfway across town at a friend's house, the one rare time I had freedom. Mom called, furious, demanding I bike back immediately, pick it up, and race it to the venue. I missed the entire evening with my friend, arrived sweaty and exhausted, and got no thank you, just a stressed "finally" Caleb from my dad. It didn't matter that I wasn't even supposed to be responsible for her gear. It was easier to blame me. It started to feel like my value was directly tied to how useful I was in supporting Zoe's life. The only place I felt truly seen was down at Robert's mechanic shop on Main Street. Robert was an older guy, gruff on the outside but with kind eyes. His son, Jason, worked there too. I started hanging around after school, just needing a quiet place away from home. They never asked much, just let me sit in the corner, maybe hand them a tool sometimes. Slowly, they started talking to me, asking about school, noticing when I seemed down. Robert would show me how things worked, talking about engines and logic. Jason, closer to my age, would just chat about normal stuff. They saw me, Caleb, not just as Zoe's brother or the kid who helps out at home. They saw my curiosity, my quiet reliability. It was a small thing, but in a world that mostly looked through me, it was everything. School became my escape hatch. I poured myself into academics, especially science and engineering. It was a world governed by rules and logic, a stark contrast to the chaotic, emotionally driven favoritism at home. I joined a robotics club, poured hours into designing, building, and programming. It was hard work, late nights, frustrating failures, and exhilarating breakthroughs. My team was good, really good, and we qualified for the state championship, a huge overnight trip a few hours away. My chance to shine, to be part of something significant that I had earned. I practically vibrated with excitement when I brought the permission slip home. Mom was on the phone, probably talking about Zoe. Dad was watching TV. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "I made the state robotics team. We're going to the championship next weekend. It's a big deal." Mom waved a hand dismissively. "MMHM, that's nice, dear." Dad grunted. "Nice." My voice was maybe a little too loud. "Mom, Dad, this is huge. It's college stuff. It's a real competition. I slid the paper onto the coffee table. Mom finally hung up, sighing dramatically. She picked up the paper, glanced at the dates, and frowned. Next weekend? Oh, Caleb, you can't go. My heart sank. What? Why not? It's Zoe's big dance showcase, Dad said, turning his eyes back to the screen. We need you here. I stared at them, uncomprehending. Need me? For what? To applaud? I've seen her rehearsal a dozen times. To help, obviously. Mom snapped, suddenly annoyed. Getting her ready, making sure her costume is perfect, helping with logistics. This is a major event for Zoe. It requires the whole family support. But this is my event. I countered, my voice shaking. I worked for months on this. It's my team, my project. Can't you manage one of Zoe's things without me? Mom scoffed. Don't be selfish, Caleb. Your sister's talent is something special. Her future is in these opportunities. Your robotics hobby. Well, it's nice you have interests, but this is family. Family. I felt a bitter laugh well up. Being here to serve Zoe is family. Missing the biggest thing I've ever done. Yes, family. Dad chimed in, raising his voice slightly. Being supportive. Your sister has a real future ahead of her, Caleb. This is important. More important than some school trip. The words hit me like a physical blow. More important. My entire effort, dismissed as less important than Zoe's dance showcase. I wanted to scream, to smash something. But I just stood there, the familiar helplessness washing over me. There was no arguing. Their minds were made up, fixated solely on the golden child. That weekend, while my robotics team competed, while my friends sent texts and photos from the championship floor, I was sitting in a crowded auditorium, watching Zoe do a slightly better than average dance routine. My job was to hold the spare costume and take photos for Mom. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. This wasn't just unfair. It was a deliberate statement of my value, or lack thereof, in their eyes. After that, I buried myself even deeper in schoolwork and spent almost all my free time at Robert's shop. Robert and Jason didn't pry, but they noticed. Jason, seeing me sketching circuit diagrams during a quiet moment, started talking about the electronics in cars. Robert, watching me organize tools meticulously, commented on my attention to detail. They weren't just giving me tasks. They were acknowledging my skills, the ones my parents never seemed to see. They started paying me properly for the work I did, small jobs like cleaning, organizing, eventually helping with diagnostics. Earning my own money, valued for my own effort, was incredibly empowering. It showed me there was a world outside my family's warped perspective. Senior year rolled around. My focus was singular. Get into college, get out. I applied to a few places, putting extra effort into my application essay, writing about my passion for problem solving and the satisfaction of building things. I applied to a state university with a strong engineering and business program, a practical choice, knowing I'd need to support myself. The acceptance letter arrived on a Tuesday. I opened it in my car outside the shop, my hands shaking. I got in, and I got a decent partial scholarship. It wasn't a full ride, not even close, but it was a solid start. I did the math 100 times. If I worked part-time, took out minimal loans, I could make it work. But I would need some help, at least for the first year's tuition and living expenses, until I could get fully on my feet. I decided to ask my parents at dinner. Zoe was scrolling on her phone, already checked out. Dad was reading the paper. Mom was serving food. I took a deep breath and put the acceptance letter on the table. I got into State U, I said, trying to sound confident. And I got a scholarship. Mom glanced at the letter for half a second before looking back at her plate. Oh, that's nice, Caleb. Nice. For years of working my butt off, sacrificing, being told I was less important, all for a nice. The familiar bitterness flared, but I pushed it down. I needed them. Yeah, it is nice, I pressed. It's a good school. The scholarship covers about half the tuition. I was hoping maybe you could help with the rest. Just the first year, I can get a job there, pay it back. Mom sighed. That put upon sound I knew so well. College is so expensive, Caleb. We don't have that kind of money just sitting around for loans. I'm not asking for loans from you. I clarified quickly. I just need some help up front. I can sign something, promise to pay it back. Dad folded his paper, finally looking at me, but his expression was weary and dismissive. Look, Caleb, college isn't for everyone. Some people are better off just getting a trade, working with their hands. You're good at that, aren't you? He gestured vaguely, probably picturing me at Robert's shop. Zoe snickered from her phone. Yeah, maybe you should have figured that out before wasting all that time on homework. I gripped my fork, knuckles white. This isn't a waste of time. I got into a good program. I have a plan. I'll graduate, get a job, I'll pay you back. I just need to start. Mom shook her head. We can't, Caleb. You need to be realistic. We've been saving, for Zoe's future. Her plans are less defined right now. She might want to travel, or just need a cushion. That's where our money is going. My blood ran cold. Saving for Zoe's undefined future, while telling me to get a trade job because my actual, concrete future wasn't worth investing in. All the expensive dance classes, the art supplies, the trendy clothes, the trips, I was saving for Zoe. My education? Not a priority. Not my priority, certainly not theirs. The betrayal was sharper, colder than anything before. They weren't just neglecting me. They were actively choosing not to support the one thing that could get me out. I couldn't eat another bite. I mumbled an excuse and left the table, the familiar knot of despair tightening in my chest. I walked straight to Robert's shop, even though it was late. Robert and Jason were cleaning up. They saw my face and stopped. Whoa, kid, what's wrong? Jason asked. I just slumped onto a stool, the acceptance letter clutched in my hand, and the whole story spilled out. The acceptance, the scholarship, asking my parents, their brutal refusal, the part about saving for Zoe. Tears I hadn't shed in years welled up, hot and angry. They just don't care, Robert. Not about me. Not about my future. It's all for her. Everything is always for her. Robert and Jason listened quietly. Robert leaned against a workbench, arms crossed, his expression grim. Jason just shook his head. When I finished, the silence hung heavy. I expected sympathy, maybe a few kind words. I didn't expect what came next. All right, Robert said, pushing off the workbench. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to go to that university. I blinked, confused. But I can't. I don't have the money. We do, Jason said simply. My head snapped up. Robert nodded. Your parents might not see your worth, Caleb, but we do. We've watched you. You're smart, you're hardworking, you're honest. You got a good head on your shoulders and a good heart. We'll cover the rest of your tuition, Robert continued. Think of it as an investment. You work for us part-time when you can, holidays, summers, maybe manage some of the books remotely. Pay us back when you graduate, when you're able. No interest, no rush. Just make us proud. I was speechless. These men, who weren't obligated to me in any way, were offering me the world. More than my own family ever had. Tears streamed down my face, but this time they were tears of overwhelming relief and gratitude. I don't know what to say. Say you'll do it, Jason smiled. I'll do it, I choked out. I won't let you down. That night I went home, not to stay but to pack. Quietly, deliberately. I filled boxes and bags. The acceptance letter was folded neatly and placed in my backpack. It wasn't an angry escape, but a strategic withdrawal. A quiet declaration that I was choosing my own path, with the help of the people who actually saw me. When I left the next morning, my parents were barely awake. Mom was making coffee, Dad was grabbing his briefcase. Zoe was still asleep. No tearful goodbyes, no heartfelt wishes. Just a casual, bye. Caleb, let us know when you're settled for Mom. College was hard, a constant juggle. Classes pushed me, and working part-time at Robert's shop, handling their accounts, setting up online ordering, managing inventory, applying what I was learning, kept me busy and grounded. The pay wasn't huge, but it was steady, and it reminded me who had my back. My dorm room was small and noisy, but it was mine. For the first time, I wasn't living in Zoe's orbit. I was building my own solar system. I made a friend, Aubrey. She was studying something completely different, full of energy and perspective. I slowly, hesitantly, told her about my family. She listened with genuine shock and sympathy. Caleb, that's messed up, was her simple, validating response. Having someone outside the situation acknowledge the unfairness without making a big deal of it, was incredibly healing. She just accepted me, no strings attached. I threw myself into work at the shop. Robert and Jason gave me more and more responsibility on the business side. I streamlined processes, cut costs, improved customer service follow-ups. We saw a noticeable increase in efficiency and customer retention. They trusted my judgment, listened to my ideas. "You've got a real head for this, Caleb," Robert would say, nodding. "Glad we invested in you." Contact with my parents was minimal. They'd call occasionally, usually Mom, and the conversation would inevitably turn to Zoe's latest adventures, her minor triumphs, her struggles. I gave brief, factual answers about school and work, deflecting attempts to draw me into their drama. There was no emotional connection anymore, just the echoes of old patterns. I was cordial, polite, but detached. The transactional relationship I decided on was already forming years before they asked for money. Around my junior year, I hit a major milestone. Through careful budgeting and working extra hours, I paid back every cent I owed Robert and Jason. Handing them that final check was one of the proudest moments of my life. Robert just smiled and clapped me on the shoulder. "Told you you'd do it, kid. We're proud of you. Always knew you had it in you." Jason shook my hand firmly. They weren't just mentors anymore. They were family. Chosen family. My senior year, things aligned even more. A client at the shop, Mr. Wallace, a sharp businessman who owned a logistics firm, had noticed the improvements I'd implemented. He chatted with Robert and Jason about me. One day, he handed me his card. "Graduating soon, right? Give me a call. We're looking for bright minds." Another validation, this time from the professional world I was about to enter. The life my parents said wasn't worth investing in was taking shape, thanks to others. A few years after graduation, when I was settled into my career, working with Mr. Wallace, applying my skills on a larger scale, and financially secure, the call came. From my mom. Her voice was shaky, full of a vulnerability I'd never heard before. "Caleb? Oh, Caleb. Honey, it's your mother." I felt a prickle of wariness. They only called like this when they needed something or when there was a drama. "Hi, Mom. What's up?" "Oh, sweetie, we're in trouble. Real trouble." She sounded close to tears. "Your father, some bad investments and just, expenses. We're really struggling. We might lose the house." She painted a grim picture of financial ruin. It was intense, dramatic. They'd always been comfortable if focused on spending on Zoe, so this felt like a drastic shift. My mind immediately went to all the money poured into Zoe over the years. Money they could have used more wisely. Money they refused to spend on my future. But I kept my voice neutral. "I'm sorry to hear that, Mom. That sounds serious." "It is," she wailed. "And, well, we were hoping you could help." There it was. The ask. After years of neglect, after refusing to help me when I needed it most, after prioritizing Zoe's every whim, they were coming to me, the son they deemed not worth investing in. The audacity was breathtaking, but not surprising. "What kind of help are you talking about?" I asked, my voice flat. "Just financial," she said, her voice turning a little more hopeful, a little less desperate. "You're doing so well, Caleb. We're so proud of you." The fake pride dripped from her words, a sickening contrast to the past. "We were thinking maybe you could help us out, just until we get back on our feet. Maybe a monthly allowance? To help with the mortgage, bills, groceries." She named a surprisingly large figure. I leaned back in my chair, processing. They wanted me to essentially become their parent, bailing them out after their poor choices and blatant favoritism led them here. The anger was there, simmering, but it was overshadowed by a cold, strategic calculation. I wasn't their little boy anymore, desperate for their approval. I was a businessman, weighing a transaction. "All right," I said finally. "I can help, but it has to be on my terms." "Oh, thank you, sweetie, anything." Mom gushed, relief flooding her voice. "This is a financial arrangement, Mom. Not anything else," I stated clearly, making sure she understood. "I will provide the slightly lower but still significant figure I had calculated per month. That for necessities only, mortgage, utilities, basic groceries. I need to see the bills. This is not for anything frivolous, and it's not an open checkbook." If the terms aren't met, the arrangement stops. Understood. The sudden business-like tone caught her off guard, but she quickly recovered. Yes, yes, understood. Thank you, Caleb. You're a lifesaver. I set up the system, transferring the agreed-upon amount each month, monitoring their spending on the card I provided for specific expenses. They grumbled occasionally about the restrictions, but they complied. My relationship with them became purely transactional. They needed funds. I provided them under strict conditions. There was no love, no warmth, just debit and credit. Zoe wasn't happy about it. I overheard her complaining on a call that I was controlling and treating them like children, but she wasn't contributing, so her opinion was irrelevant. Then came news. Zoe was engaged. Her fiancé, Ryan, seemed like a decent enough guy from the brief interaction I had with him once. And naturally, despite their alleged financial distress that I was funding, my parents and Zoe started planning an elaborate, incredibly expensive engagement party. The hypocrisy was galling. They were getting rescue money from me and using their other funds, or maybe even some of my monthly allowance redirected, to throw a lavish bash. The hints started subtle, then became heavier. Zoe's party is going to be so lovely. We wish we could afford everything she wants. It's so much work putting this together on a budget, you wouldn't believe. Then the direct ask started. Caleb, since you're doing so well, and you're helping us generally, would you consider contributing specifically to the party costs? It would mean so much to Zoe. Just a little something extra? A little something extra? After refusing to pay for my college, saving it for her vague future, and now needing me to bail them out, they wanted me to fund her party too? The sheer entitlement was staggering. But I agreed. Not because I wanted to, but because I saw an opportunity. I told them I would cover specific, major expenses directly, bypassing them. I would pay the caterer's deposit, the venue rental fee, maybe the band. Significant amounts that would cripple the event if they disappeared. I handled it like a business deal, contacting Mr. Henderson, the caterer, discussing costs, signing agreements, transferring the large deposits. Leading up to the event, they briefly pretended I was a valued family member again. Caleb, can you help with the playlist? Caleb, what do you think of these decorations? I played along, outwardly agreeable, inwardly preparing. I cleared my schedule, even turned down a potential work trip, telling myself I was doing it to see Robert and Jason, maybe Aubrey, who I knew were invited. The party was set for a Saturday evening. On Friday morning, I received a text message. Not from Mom or Dad, from Zoe. It was short and cold. Hey, Caleb, about tomorrow. Things are getting a little complicated with Ryan's family and the guest list. We've decided it's probably best if you don't come. Hope you understand. That was it. No call, no explanation, no apology. Just a text. After I had paid for the venue, the food, the music. After I had rearranged my life. After a lifetime of being sidelined, I was being cut out of the event I helped pay for with a flimsy, insulting excuse. Something inside me snapped. Not violently, but with a cold, clear precision. Decades of neglect, of being blamed, of being told I wasn't important, of being used for chores, for money, all culminated in that single, dismissive text message. Hope you understand. Oh, I understood perfectly. I wasn't family when it mattered to me, but I was a convenient ATM when it mattered to them. And now that they'd gotten what they wanted for the party, I was disposable again. I didn't hesitate. I didn't call them to argue. I didn't text back. I stood up from my desk, picked up my phone, and started making calls. First, I called Mr. Henderson, the caterer. Mr. Henderson, this is Caleb. Regarding Zoe's party tomorrow, I need to cancel the catering services I paid for. He sounded surprised. Cancel? At this short notice? Mr. Miller, there will be significant fees. The contract. I understand the contract, Mr. Henderson, I said, my voice calm but firm. However, I was just informed that I'm no longer invited to the event. As the person who paid for the catering, and who is now explicitly excluded, I am withdrawing my funding and canceling the service. Please process the cancellation. Any non-refundable deposit I will accept as a cost of doing business. I made sure to emphasize I was uninvited from the event I funded. Next, I called the venue. Same explanation. Same result. They kept the non-refundable deposit, but the main booking fee was withdrawn. Then the band. Then the photographer. Piece by piece, I systematically dismantled the parts of the party I had paid for. My parents and Zoe must have realized what was happening hours later, as vendors started calling them saying services were canceled due to the funding being withdrawn by the payer, Caleb Miller. The frantic calls and texts started flooding my phone. From Mom, Dad, and Zoe. Begging, demanding, raging. I ignored them all. I heard about the fallout from Jason. Robert's shop did work for a relative of someone attending the party. The gossip spread like wildfire through our small town. The Lavish party collapsed at the last minute. Guests arriving to a chaotic scene, vendors packing up, parents looking mortified and furious. Zoe was reportedly in hysterics. The feeling wasn't triumph, not exactly. It was colder, a profound, quiet sense of finality. They had used me one last time, and I had responded not with emotion, but with logic and consequence. I had taken back not just the money, but the power they had held over me my entire life. They had treated me like I was nothing, like I didn't belong, even at the party I paid for. So I simply removed the foundation I had provided. They crumbled, just like I watched them crumble. And I was finally completely free,